Welcome. I'm Ron Baker, Director of the Canadian Small Church Ministry Center, sponsored by Small Church Connections. And this is us, Canadian Small Churches in Action podcast. And today we have two very special guests. I'm speaking with them. Well, if I tell too much, that gives it away. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, tell us who they are and what their ministry background has been. You know what? If I say too much more, have said too much more. So I'll start off. Let's start off with Craig and then Sue, and let you guys just run with that question, and then we'll move from there.
All right. So I'm Matt, and I grew up in
Did I
a
call
rural
you Craig?
community. Yeah, you call me by my last name.
Yeah, there
It
you go.
happens all
Last
the
name.
time.
I'm sorry, Matt. Yeah.
My middle name's John, so it gets really confusing. My teachers at school always did that, but I grew up in a small town. I grew up in South River, Ontario, and so my ministry experience growing up in that town with part of a small church there, very Caucasian, rural kind of environment. And I actually, after college, went back up there, and 7 years I spent doing youth ministry. And we networked 11 different churches together and ran a youth network and worked with a student group out of the school, the high school there, the only high school in the whole region. And that was sort of a lot of my ministry experiences there. However, I did meet my wife, Sue, and I'll let her tell you a bit what she was doing back in those days. And since then, the Lord literally pushed me to come to the
Okay.
city, and I've been at this small church here in North Toronto, right on the edge of Scarborough, in the Don Valley area. It's called Don Valley Bible Chapel. I've been here for 20 years in March, and I've
Wow.
been on staff and the lead pastor here for at least 15 or 16 of those years. So yeah, that's my background.
All right. Let's swing over to Sue and see what she can tell us.
Yeah, I actually came to Canada at 10 years old, immigrant family. Of course, English. We came from England. We just had funny accents. We didn't have any family here, and actually moved into the very community where I'm living now. So yes, I've seen a huge changes over the years. I don't come from a Christian family, but I started attending a church when I was about 17 and came to know the Lord then. And God just put me right in Christian ministry, starting off with working with Child Evangelism Fellowship for quite a few years. And then I started running the children's program down at Regent Park, where Young Street Mission is, at the Christian
Really?
Community Center. And so there, of course, many newcomers there, especially a lot of Vietnamese had just come at that time, and many other different cultures. And I loved it so much, and working with them. And then, of course, we got married. I followed Matt up north to a very small town. And it was a hard adjustment for me. It was good 7 years, but I was a bit antsy. And so Don Valley, of course, called Matt to be their youth pastor and knew that we couldn't survive in Toronto on a youth pastor's income. So they asked me if I'd like to be their children's director. And so I took it. I was part-time, which is good because our kids were young, and came on staff. And through the years, Don Valley have been very open to me just developing and changing my ministry. I worked myself out of a job and had other people take over the children's work. And I've always had a real interest in outreach and community engagement, probably from my time working at Young Street Mission. And so then I started serving, volunteering at the local food bank, and got to meet lots and lots of people, got connected with working women, and started partnering with them to run a meal program for the community.
Wow, you guys have had a very varied ministry over the years. Let me just jump into that whole question of you were an immigrant, Sue. You're in an area now in Toronto that at one point was probably farmland, a number of basically one culture, monoculture, probably Caucasian. Now very different. So let me ask a question. How do you welcome newcomers, new Canadians, immigrants into the church community that you're part of? And I'll let either of you start. Maybe both of you can just sort of go back and forth and let us have some ideas on that.
Who's going first?
Oh, go for it, Matt.
We'll go first.
Sure, I can go. Well, I always think we're a little bit cheating at Don Valley just because um, we live in a community that is predominantly immigrants. So
Mhm.
you can't do anything in our neighborhood without encountering different cultures, different languages, and all that comes with that, all the different barriers and things that you're crossing every day. Um, I think welcoming um, really comes down to adopting a learning attitude
Mm.
and treating people like family. There's a number of passages in the Old Testament that talk about the foreigners who live among you. For example,
Yeah.
Leviticus 19, where it says, verse 33, 34, do not take advantage of foreigners who live among you in your land. Treat them like native born Israelites and love them as you love yourself. Remember that you were once foreigners living in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So, I think really becoming a learner and kind of welcoming new Canadians is basically just showing an interest in them and asking them questions. I think it's that simple. Starting point is to just become a learner and where you come from. What's your background? How did you end up here? What's your story? And just that listening posture. And I think that alone, people are craving connection. They've left family behind. They've left all their support systems are gone, and they're craving they're trying to figure out how do we be Canadian? How do we work in this completely different environment? And when someone just takes an interest in them and asks them, how are you? Who are you? Where are you from? And start listening to their story, that alone um, says you're welcome here more than anything, really. And I know it's really simple, but I think it's really the heart of, of how you welcome people. So
Okay,
that's a big
we'll
one.
jump over to Sue here and see what she
Uh,
has.
Actually, yeah, obviously, pretty much what he was saying. I think a big one is just to even go a step further and to have them come in your home, or they might invite you to go to their home and to go there and or just for a visit, and if they want to be hospitable and offer you a drink or offer you some kind of food, always good to say yes to that, even if it doesn't look appetizing. But we've had that experience, of course, over the years of just having people come in our home, and I think it's a huge deal, I think, for to be in a Canadian home. And just I think it says so much about just acceptance, that you would accept me enough to have me in your space, in your home. I think that's is a big thing.
There
I
might be
think
some steps towards getting to that point
I
where
was
they,
gonna
right? Yeah, there might be
you
some steps.
anticipated my next question.
Yeah, but I don't think North Americans understand. If you've grown up here, you don't understand the significance of hospitality.
Hmm.
And with other cultures. Like if you sit down and have a coffee with someone and you invite them to eat with you, that says I'm in good standing with you. I'm in. So in many cultures, that is a big deal. You don't just do that with anybody, right?
Mm.
And so it might be as simple as, I'd love to hear your story. I don't have time right now, but could we meet for coffee?
Mhm.
It's on me. You know what I mean? So there's a third space kind of thing. It was maybe one of the steps towards maybe saying, "Hey, do you want to come to our house?" Um, I think the other thing that's part of in the middle of that too is that there's so many, like we rarely appreciate the settlement needs of newcomers to Canada. And so when people are fresh here and they're new here, there's a huge opportunity to just do good works. And when you hear someone's story and you hear their struggles they're having to, you know, speak the language or to whatever, to just there's so many opportunities just to meet a practical need in some small way. And just offering someone something, no strings attached. Let me help you with that. If you need this, this is where you go. People don't even know where to go. So some of that just sort of practical stuff, we serve a meal at our church once a month. Some have dinner with us. Even that, just all those things kind of are bridges towards getting to know someone, treating them with dignity, and just hearing their story and see where the Lord takes that, you know. So I think there's lots of those things in between.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sue, you started talking a little bit about some of the ministries that you've been part of and that are happening in the church. Maybe you can expand a little bit on that as it has worked with newcomers and that type of thing.
Well, yeah, I guess, I mean, when I worked with Young Street Mission down at Regent Park, one of the things we did is that we had a Saturday morning breakfast club. And we set it up so it would be like, kids just coming into our little, like as if they were coming into our house. And we would have cereal, pancakes, and we'd watch a few cartoons and hang out and then do some sports. And the idea was just to, create a space as if they were, coming into my home. And just others would come and just get to know them. Then we would often go and visit the families and just go into their homes where they were living. And of course, the parents were very open once they knew who we were, and they were very appreciative of what we were doing with their kids. And then I guess that the big one is here in working in the Don Valley area. I guess it was quite a few years ago now. We started having a Christmas dinner every year, and to me that was always such a big deal because I remember as a kid not having any family here except for my brothers and my parents, and it was such a lonely time of the year. And this was, of course, before the internet, and we could do this. We couldn't even look at each other. It cost so much money to call. We just weren't able to connect with our family back in England. And so I always sort of remember that lonely time. And for me, that Christmas dinner was about, let's draw in other people who feel the same way. They're far from home and they're missing their family. Why don't you come and we'll be family together? And of course, we couldn't do it in our own home because there was too many people. We usually would get about 150 to 200 people coming. And a lot of people just wanting to understand, what do Canadians do at Christmas? Some of it was just curiosity. And so we'd have, of course, a traditional dinner. We would have conversation starters at the table. We would have our own people sit in with them and just
Yeah.
ask the questions and just show interest. So then once we started doing that, it was the working with working women. They really liked the idea. They said, why don't we collaborate and do this together, do something on a monthly basis? And they had some funding that they were able to do that with, and so we started the monthly dinners. And then of course COVID hit, and amazing how it all worked out, because the government had so much emergency relief fund, and working women were able to tap into that. We were actually able to carry on a weekly takeout meal program. So we would people would come to get a meal just at the door to take out. We also had delivery service for those who couldn't get out. And so, we were able to do that all throughout COVID. And then we started our monthly program again. And we usually get probably about anywhere between 60 to 80 people, but they're becoming very regular. We have been able to invite some into our home, but that's one of our goals is for those who are helping and serving, we want to take it to the next step and actually invite them into our home and get to know them even better there.
Well, I think I heard, or I have found somewhere, that being called a family of families seems to be a bit of a slogan that you would use for ministry. And I think that's very much so, is bringing people in, working with them. So let me ask the awkward question. What stupid things have churches done that they shouldn't have done in ministering to newcomers? And I'll let either one of you take that one away, or both of you.
Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, so I would say, acting before listening.
Okay.
So even Jesus, he says, what do you want me to do for you? Right. So, I can't remember the passage off the top of my head. I should, but he said, what do you want me to do? I want you to heal me. Right. But he asked, what do you want me to do for you? So, it's, sometimes I think we think, we're going to do this great thing for these families. We're going to, collect a whole bunch of groceries and give them groceries. Meanwhile, we have no idea what they actually will eat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right. And so, right. And we have no idea, maybe they don't even need groceries. Maybe they're fine for food. Maybe there's some other need. Right. So I think sometimes we think we're going to help these poor people, and we haven't really listened, taken the time to figure out what's needed here. Right. And I think there's a discernment process we skip over so often. Another thing is, the language barrier is a real issue, right? Like, people are really struggling sometimes just to communicate, and a lot gets lost in translation. And one of the things that really, really gets in the way is these assumptions about people, cultural assumptions, but also we find a lot of people treat, without even thinking, they start treating people as if they're a little bit slow.
Yeah.
Right. Because they can't speak, they can't keep up with the language. Meanwhile, you listen, you spend some time, you slow down and you listen, and you discover, this person, I discovered that there was one lady we were talking to, she had 3 doctorate degrees. That's crazy, right? Like, this guy's, they tend to, maybe the work they have, they have a labor job, but meanwhile, you find out that they're an architect or they're an engineer, but their qualifications don't work in Canada. They have to upgrade, and there's so many barriers to upgrading that driving the taxi is what I'm going to have to do, and I'm doing it for the sake of my kids. We run into that over and over again. So there's this unconscious sort of way sometimes we interact with people that communicates to them, I'm up here and you're down here and you need my help.
Yeah.
As opposed to, we are actually, what does the gospel say? Gospel says we're equal. We're an equal need. right? And so we are in equal need of salvation. We're in equal need of Jesus. And so there's those it's unwritten sort of natural ways we kind of, we got to check ourselves very carefully. So I think those are some things that really get in the way. And we make these huge mistakes. We assume people need certain things they don't need. We don't stop and listen, and we kind of assume people are a certain way or a certain place. um if you can make one of the things that's come out of Sue's meal program, we asked some new immigrant ladies who love to cook if they would serve in the kitchen, right? So instead of the Christian church, here we're the Christians and we're going to serve you, if we can serve together a practical need. These ladies, as far as we know, they're Catholic kind of background. They don't believe in Jesus yet, right? Not the way we know him as Savior and Lord, right? But they want to meet a practical need. And so, the kitchen has this Hispanic group of ladies and a few people from our church mixed in, and they're serving side by side. Now, all of a sudden, they're equally working together at a task. And what's happening? Well, we're talking about our lives. We're talking about, what happens in the kitchen. And what's being created there is these incredible opportunities to share, can I pray for you about that? Oh, guess what? This is what God did in my life this week. Oh, and all these conversations that happen. And also, we hit a problem, and I notice you deal with it differently. Why do you deal with it differently? Oh, well, because I just pray. I believe Jesus is helping me with this. There's so many things, and it's not like we're serving you. It's like we're serving together, and it's just a beautiful. I think that's a big mistake we make, is that we're the ones who are going to do all the work, and what happens is people's dignity is undermined, and we don't even realize it. Undermining people's dignity. And people have a hard time with that. Like, what do? A Muslim comes in to serve a food program. Well, there's some things we just do. Sue gets all the volunteers together and we say a prayer before.
Yeah.
And we just do it, right? And 9 times out of 10, the Muslim stays and it's kind of curious. And one, you know what I mean? And so there's these things that if we could just realize that Jesus loves sinners, and there's a lot of things we can do together with people of different faiths and different beliefs that create opportunities for gospel conversations. It creates a totally different dynamic and a much more powerful, I think, witness in the long run, if people are prepared to be themselves, to be open and honest about their faith as we're doing it. But I think that's a huge mistake. We put ourselves up here and treat people down here, and I think that's a big one.
So Sue, would you have any other things that we should be watching that we don't do?
No, I just agree totally with what Matt said. I think I was just thinking it really does give us an opportunity to practice the fruit of the Spirit. And I think sometimes, we can become very impatient, especially while we're, trying to understand someone. And even if it's not just the language, it's the accent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to just kind of push people away. And, just if you're not patient, then you kind of just also give off that impression, well, it's okay, it's not important, I don't want to hear it, right? And so you really, really have to be committed to, to listen, to try to understand, and be able to then, say it back. Okay, is this what you're meaning? Is this what you're saying? So I think, if you're always in a rush and you just want to get the job done, then they're going to pick up that, obviously they're a project, and that's it.
So let me come to another question. Dealing with individuals, working with them, getting to know them. They bring up problems, the things that they're encountering in the society. Is there a place for political activism, or is that it's a good thing, but maybe for someone else? I don't know how to ask that question.
Yeah, I think there is a place for speaking to political issues that the role that the church plays.
Mhm.
But I often, the way we go about it, it's as if politics is the answer,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And I think that's the problem. And do I want the people I'm reaching out to, do I want to rally them around a political cause, or do I want to introduce them to Jesus?
okay,
And there's a fine line there, right? So because these are very hot topic kind of things, and there's a political polarization going on, you can, instead of them hearing about Jesus, they're just latching on to this issue that they care deeply about, and they're not really coming to a place of repentance and belief. In fact, you might actually be doing the opposite, where it's about me fighting for myself and my rights,
Mhm.
as opposed to me laying down my life for Jesus Christ, right? So I think you can have conversations about that, and some of the more I would say new immigrant families are very concerned about LGBTQ, the alphabet people,
Yeah,
right? Like they're very concerned about some of that ideology and stuff. It goes totally against their upbringing and their experience of family. And so there are connecting points in that conversation. But at the end of the day, you got to be careful that you're not just, not making the conversation all about the issue as opposed to the savior, who
mhm.
is actually the answer to all these things in the end of the day, right? So
Yeah,
I think it's a difficult thing, but teaching about good parenting, yeah, that's the big thing. If you can do some things to help parents just parent better, help them, that's a huge thing that we see. There's this tension between new immigrant families, their children who are trying to become Canadian and learn the language faster
yeah,
than their parents do, and all that, right? There's always sort of family tensions and dysfunction, just like in any family, we're all broken. But this new immigrant experience is it's even more amplified some
yeah,
of those issues.
Mhm.
So coming alongside parents and helping them is probably an open door there for a lot of help and care. Um, but I'd be careful. Be very careful with the political activism stuff. That it's not like you don't want to convince them to be a political player. You want to
Mhm.
convince them to become a follower of Jesus, right? You want them to hear who he is, and I think it often gets lost
yeah,
in those
yeah,
conversations. The gospel is often lost. Get so caught up in the issue that gospel gets sort of a back seat, and that's a tragedy if that's happening. I was gonna, can I say one thing about the previous
yeah.
question? I know we're going backwards, but I have to say it, that one thing churches do wrong is the bait and switch. Come
Okay.
have a meal so that, and in order to get that meal, you're going to have to listen to a 20-minute sermon,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right? And this whole idea that the only way to communicate the gospel is to package it as a sermon, right? And to give the sound bite, right? And we do things like we've had the Christmas meal. What we do is we have the meal, we have people interspersed, they're sharing their stories. We're trying to train our own people to look for gospel opportunities, to look for opportunities to pray for people. And then afterwards we might have a program, right? And if you want to come to the program, you're invited, but you don't have to. There's a way out for those who are not interested. I think that's also putting the Holy Spirit back in the driver's seat of our evangelism, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just working with churches I've worked with, I think sometimes, the whole thing is to get people in the room and make them listen to a sermon, and they're not even listening.
Yeah.
But if you can let their questions and their interests kind of drive it a bit, I think you go a lot farther. So the bait and switch, stay away from it.
Yeah.
It leaves it's just not the way to do it.
Bad taste in the mouth. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you actually answered the last question that I was going to ask you, and unfortunately for both of you, we're at the end already. We've gone very, very quickly through this, and so Sue, I'm going to come back to you and just ask you the question: if you had one thing that you would say, okay, churches, here's the thing that a small church pastor or leader, the church itself, needs to be effective in ministry to newcomers, what would you say?
Well, I guess lead by example. I think it's one thing to encourage your people to practice hospitality, but another thing to do it yourself. And so do it, show people, invite them into it. I think really is key. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I wish we had another hour or two, but maybe at some point we'll get that opportunity. But for the moment, thank you very, very much for just your thoughts, and particularly newcomer ministry. That has become and is certainly a large part of what small churches are having to deal with now. And so my thank you very much for joining me today.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.